you're asked to basically plot it into the graph. Now, I'll just give y'all a minute because even yesterday, very few students had solved it. And I would ask y'all to go ahead and try solving it and plotting these figures or segment 4, segment 5, and segment 6, these three into the graph. Okay. So does anyone want to answer in which part of these four different quadrants that we have would segment 4 fall into? Anyone wants to raise their hand? Okay. So over here, okay, Gabrielle, you raised your hand. Where would segment 4 fall into?
That would be potential question mark customers.
Okay, and any idea whether it would be over here in the lower half or in the upper?
And in the west would be in the upper part in invest.
Invest. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so ideally when you have a figure like 4.2 and 3.2, how I would go about marking it is 4.2 would be somewhere over here and 3.2 would be somewhere still lower. So my solution would be that it would be in the exit part as yet. It would not be in the invest part because you have a very much lower own position that's there, 3.2. And that's why we put segment 4 somewhere over here, and it doesn't come in the invest part. And we use this line basically to kind of segregate when we have our recommendations. We decide, okay, whether we want to exit from this customer or invest into this customer, depending on how we plot it. Yeah, Gabrielle, I can see you've raised your hand again.
Yeah, but isn't the middle, isn't that 3.5, and then 3.2 wouldn't be that far away? If it's 3.5 in the middle, and then in between 1 and 3.5, it will be 1 point. It would be 1.75. Am I wrong? No.
So let me just clarify this. If you mark this as 0, then yes, your middle will be 3.5.
Okay, then I misjudged it. Yeah, okay, yeah.
So the thing is, we're marking this as 1. So when you calculate it in the middle, you'd get 4 instead of 3.5. Of course, if you have 0, then you're absolutely right. You get 3.5 as the mid value. But we calculate it from 1. Yeah. Okay. Middle is 4. How do we get the price oriented service? That's just given to you. So yesterday as well, we had a question: price oriented, service oriented, value oriented. As you can see in 4, 5, 6, we don't have that. So that's kind of just given to you by the professor to segment your customers. And I mean, if you want to think of it in a way, your price oriented customers would be less attractive because they may not want to pay a higher price, whereas your own position, they still might be a very good fit for the company, because maybe their share of wallet is still much higher than for this company than what they would be wanting to spend on another company, or the stability of the relationship might be great. But don't focus on this because this is already given. Then you have segment 5. Anyone wants to answer where we would have segment 5? So that is 5.1 and 5. Star customer, great. So we have it, as we mentioned, if this is 4 somewhere here, and if it's 5 point something and 5, so you have it as a star customer. Remember, this is in your invest section, so everything in this triangle would be investing into the customers. So segment 1 as of now, segment 5. And then we had segment 6 finally, where we had 2.3 and 1.9. Attractiveness 2.3 and 1.9 as own position. And does anyone want to answer where this would go? Marginal customer, great. So it would be somewhere down here, and even our solution says that. And remember, as I mentioned, these are all in the exit category. Now your B part of the question, You had to kind of do a mathematical. Gabriel, is your hand still up or
Oh,
from
sorry.
last time? Okay. B part of the question, you all were asked, there was one line, one customer segment 3, which we didn't have figures. And you all were asked to calculate the value or the attractiveness and own position, the score for segment C. So maybe take a minute and try solving it yourselves, and then we can see the solution. And remember, when you're solving it, segregate your different criteria correctly. We've even marked it to kind of make it easier for y'all. Okay. Does anyone want to answer for own position, which would be the 3 criteria and the answer that you got? Okay, so for own position, we would be looking at the stability of the relationship, the switching costs of the customer, and the share of wallet. And for attractiveness, we're looking at growth of purchases, size of wallet, and image of customer. As I mentioned, we're constantly using a weightage method in this particular exercise and generally for the tutorial. So for attractiveness, how we calculate it is we say, we look at these 3 which are in white, and we say 40% of 6 plus 50% of 5 plus 10% of 6. This is how you get your score for attractiveness. And that's a 5.5. And similarly, for own position, you have a weight of 40% and share of wallet. So 0.4 into 3 plus 0.2 into 5 plus 0.4 into 2. And you get a value of 3. Is this clear so far for everyone? Okay, I'm taking that as a yes. And we plotted all of this, and then we are asked to provide strategic recommendations based on the results that we have. Does anyone have a sort of an idea what kind of a recommendation you would give for each customer segment? Let's go with customer segment 1, where we've plotted them as solid customers. Anyone? Okay. Then I'm going to show you all the solution. For customer segment 1, we are saying we hold and we don't over invest because they are still not our star customer. For customer segment 2, we also consider an exit. Going back to the graph, they are our marginal customers. So we are considering exit and we don't want to invest into them. Customer segment 3, we had quite a high, I think own attractiveness was quite high as we calculated it, and our own position was also relatively high. So in that case, our customer segment 3 fell into the invest part of our of the graph and into potential question marks. So we say we are going to invest into this customer segment. And similarly for 4, 5, and 6, depending on where in the graph we were able to plot them, we're going to say we can either do further analysis for 4. So where did we have 4? We had 4 into the potential question marks. It's a question mark, so you kind of need to have further analysis, but still it's in the exit part versus what we had for segment 3 in the invest part. So we need to do further analysis. And for segment 5, we said we want to invest resources to defend against competition. And then segment 6 was in the extreme lower half, left-hand side, marginal customer. So we said we strongly consider an exit. And our overall evaluation would be that we basically had very few segments which were totally attractive or very few which even had great positions. So in that case, we need to evaluate our positioning, our 4 P's of marketing, product, price, place, promotion. And we also say that we want to really focus on segment 3. That's the figure that we found out, for which would be somewhere over here. And we say we want to invest into them and we want to focus them to kind of make them a star customer, because we see them as a potential investment and need to move them from a question mark or a potential customer to a star customer. I hope this is quite clear for everyone. Okay, then I can move on to the next.
Sorry, I have a question regarding this segment. Because they are 3 type, but what will be the type for the 5th group? Because I don't think that is price, service, or value given.
I didn't really get your question for the fifth segment.
Yeah, because previously we have like this 1, 2, 3 segment, and they're like price orientated, service orientated, value orientated.
Right.
But what will be for the segment 5? Because I cannot match the previous given information.
So I don't think you're asked to, match it in any way in that sense. You're just asked to place them into the graph over here. As I mentioned earlier, you don't need to necessarily this is just given as a segment for the sake of a question. You could have even been given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're not really asked to put a strategic recommendation in terms of putting these under segments. Your strategic recommendations are more as to how to play about with these customers, given that one may be in the invest part and how you want to move them to a star customer versus not investing into your marginal customers.
Okay, so the first just like name, and we do not necessarily to repeat it.
You don't have to give a strategic recommendation as to where whether you need to call them price-based customers, value-based customers. That's not what you have to give. An overall recommendation about whether you want to invest, you don't want to invest, how you want to channel your efforts to move them from maybe one of your potential customers to a star customer. And you see that basis the graph and give it per customer segment.
Okay, and one more question. So can you please explain what is like this value-oriented customer? What is exactly this value?
As I mentioned, these 3 things don't really make a difference. It's just a segment that's been given to you for the sake of maybe categorizing your customers, but a value-oriented customer, so a price-oriented customer, someone who's sensitive to price. Service is someone who's looking for great service, and value is someone who's looking for the best value. So a combination of price and service. But this should be part of your lecture. It wouldn't really be part of the tutorial if it's covered at all. I'm not sure because I'm not responsible for holding the lecture, but in my understanding of value-oriented customers, it's a combination of the best value versus price and service are customers who focus on one of those.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I had someone else raise their hand. Do you still have a question?
No.
Okay. Then let's move to the ABC analysis. So this is your the third tool that we are going to be studying in this course to basically rank your customers and invest into your customers or not invest. And in the ABC analysis, we kind of prioritize customers. So we have a customer segment group A where we want, these are our main customers, and we use the Pareto principle to categorize these customers. So the Pareto principle says that 80% of your revenues should come from 25% of your customers. And you use the 80-20 principle. And in sense of marketing, I clarified it with our professor, our assistant professors, because in the example that you see, it's 80-25 and not 80-20. So remember that we are seeing 25% of the customers giving 80% of the revenues, okay? And so you had a question where you were given 12 customers and you're given number of rentals and revenue per rental. And then you're asked to find out which customers would, fall into your A, B, and C category. And maybe take a minute to go about this. This is a very simple calculation, and try ranking your customers, and then we can discuss the solution. Okay, does anyone have an idea as to how we go about this exercise? So what we basically do is we do a multiplication of the number of rentals into the revenue per rental, and we get a total revenue from each customer. So in case of the first customer, we have 1 into 400, 400, 5 into second customer, 5 into 100, 500. You do this for all 12 customer segments. And then as you can see, your third customer segment has the highest revenue. So you list it down basically in descending order from highest to lowest. So 10,000 for the third customer segment. Then you have 4,500 seventh customer segment, and you list down all 12. And what you get is a table like this. So for example, we had our total revenue, and then we add up the total revenue and we get 25,000 from revenue from all customers. And that's how we find out their share. So we have 10,000 divided by 25,000 into 100. And that's how you find out the share for customer segment 3. Similarly, for customer segment 7, you have 4,500 divided by 25,000 into 100, 18%. You do that for all line items, all customers, and then you have a cumulative share, which is basically a normal cumulative calculation, 40, then 40 plus 18, 58, 58 plus 12, 70. You do it for all your line items. And then you kind of see that, okay, so 25% of 12 customers would be 1/4 of 12, which would be 3 customers. That would fall into your segment A. So the top 3 customers are falling into your segment A of the ABC analysis. Then your next 4 are falling into your B, and then your next 5 are falling into your C segment. Yeah, Gabrielle, let me just complete, then you can maybe ask a question. I also had a few questions yesterday and day before with respect to, we've been asked to segregate it as per cumulative share. So why are we not calculating the 8th customer segment, the 4th one, as part of A? But as per the response that I've got from our assistant professor, we've been told that we don't really differentiate between cumulative share of customers and cumulative share of revenue. We are seeing it as per the number of customers at this point of time. So that's the reason we are having 3 and 4 and then 5. It's difficult to, for example, have 4 over here and then 5 here, because in the graph, as we saw, 55% of your customers would form part A and B, and then only 45% form part C. And that's not clearly divisible in our case of 12. And that's why we cut it off after the putting these 4 into B, the category B. So I hope that's quite clear to you all. And I've also recommended students from previous classes to go ahead and ask on Ilyas or ask in the schedule or the session that you'll have with Professor Kuster on Saturday, where you all can ask doubts whether this is exactly how you all need to even go about it in the exam, since some of you all were confused because of the wording here where it says ABC analysis based on the cumulative share of revenue. Does anyone have a question? Gabrielle, I think you had a question. Alice?
Okay. Would it also have been correct if we chose 3 customers for the segment B or no?
So ideally, there's no cutoff for the segment B that we can clearly see, because 55% of 12 customers. So say you have 55 divided by 100 into 12, you're getting 6.6, right? So that's like half of the seventh customer. So that's the reason we included the 7th customer, also for the sake of having 3, 4, and 5 when we are talking about investing into customers and putting in investment efforts into customers. So that is the explanation that I have received, which is why this is how we segment it. But I would really encourage you all to even ask the professor further on, in case you all get a question which gives you all maybe 10 customers and you all don't know how to divide it. Maybe you all can get more clarity from the professor as to how she wants it done in that case.
Okay, thanks.
I don't really understand your explanation. Okay. So as I explained to you all earlier, as part of this graph that we saw, we have a concept of Pareto efficiency, which we use to segregate customers. So what we say is that 25% of your customers give you 80% of your revenue. That's because the remaining customers may not make as many purchases, may not be spending as much. Your revenue from them is much lesser, as we can see even in this table. Your revenue from the customers below is much lesser than what you have up here. So these customers form the highest share of revenue. And that's what we use Pareto principle for, to kind of categorize these into A, B, and C. So what we say is 25% of 12, because you have 12 customers here. 25% of 12 is 1/4 of 12, which is 3. And that's why your top 3 customers in this case form segment A. So I hope this is now understandable. Yeah. So
and then we just ignore the fact that it's only 80%, that it's only 70% cumulative share. We just accept it, so we go with the customers and not with the cumulative share.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same question, and when I asked, what do we give preference to, cumulative share or cumulative share of revenue versus cumulative share of customers? I was told that both of them, it doesn't really make a difference. So in this case, what we are doing is just using Pareto efficiency with these 12 customers. But I mean, for me as well, I would like to have it cleared if I was in your place. So I would go ahead and further ask the professor on Saturday if you'll have a chance. Because to me, even this seems a little confusing, this particular line. So, but the explanation that I got is that it's not basis cumulative share of customers or cumulative share of revenue. In this case, we just do it as per customers. Then could it be top 2 would be wrong, because that's not following your Pareto efficiency based on customer or cumulative share. Like over here, your top 3 are 25% of your total customers. Top 2 would not even form your cumulative share of 80%, which it's not following Pareto efficiency. So yeah, top 2 would be wrong. Then if we don't have questions for this part, I would move on to services marketing. So services marketing is one of my favorite parts of marketing, or one of my favorite subjects in marketing. And it's because nowadays you have services forming a huge part of your industry, the service industry. And marketing for services is characterized differently from marketing for normal products or goods that are very tangible. And we have 5 main features through which we classify something as a service. And what the definition says is it's essentially intangible, and we are focusing on intangibility through the definition, but there are also other features that help you characterize something as a service versus a commodity. And the 5 features, as I mentioned earlier, intangibility is one of the most important, where you can't see, feel, touch a service. You just have to kind of consume the service without necessarily feeling or touching it. Perishability, in sense of once a service, if you miss out on a service, it's gone. The time is gone. The chance to avail of the service is gone. Like an example that I would give here is an airline ticket. So what happens for an airline or for a customer once the aircraft has flown and a seat has gone unsold, or a customer has not bought a seat on that particular airline, it's highly perishable. You can't get it back. Similarly with hotel rooms, for example, if it's gone for the night, it's gone for the night. And that's the reason during COVID, you often saw that hotels were even slashing prices, because it made more sense for them to sort of sell it at whatever price they were getting, because it was a perishable service. It couldn't be stored. Inseparability, you generally cannot separate the service provider from the service. Take, for example, a consultant. If I'm a consultant, my services of consultancy can't be separated from me. Variability, I have my service may vary from time to time, depending on my mood, depending on several other factors that might come into play. Take it to be a hairdresser services. You have, for example, Bloom's as a chain of salons in Mannheim, and you may even have different services availed in each salon, or different services that you may have, like a haircut. You may have a wonderful haircut. You step into the saloon in March, and then you step into the same salon, same hairdresser in June. You may be disappointed. Perceived purchase risk. Perceived purchase risk refers to the certain quotient of risk that comes about while purchasing a service, because you're not sure about how well it will be delivered, or whether you'll be fully satisfied, because you can't see it in advance. And yeah, these are the 5 characteristics. I saw a few hands raised. I'll give you all the chance to now ask your questions.
Yeah, so I was wondering, are those characteristics from the perspective of the customer or the perspective of the company?
So these are characteristics, for example, when you're seeing it's from both sides. So a service would be perceived as intangible from a customer's point of view, and perishable from both point of views. So you generally talk of it like you can't separate intangibility, because if it's intangible for the customer, and it's intangible for even the service provider. But when we are going about the example, you'll see that, for example, when we are looking at, let's come to that, you'll see that there's certain customer focus and there's a certain service provider focus for each of these different characteristics. Julie?
Yes, I have a question about the perishability.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talk about like buying tickets for a plane trip, I understand the aspect of perishability, but for services like haircuts or restaurants, I don't really like understand the perishability, because if you can get a haircut whenever you want, right? So how is the service perishable in this case?
We're referring to the time that would go for the hairdresser. Like, for example, if your hairdresser has a slot free from 2 to 3 and you don't have, you don't have a customer coming in at that point of time, his service is highly perishable.
But then how is a product not perishable? Because some products are also like on the markets for a certain time, or some products have a lifetime value. And I don't understand how perishability is only a characteristic of services, while in my opinion, it is also an aspect for products.
Okay. So, for example, I understand you're talking about maybe fruits, vegetables that are easily perishable, right? But they are still available. They are still there in a hard form, available for a longer period of time. They're still available to consume for a longer period of time. It's not like, okay, if my hour has gone, then I cannot provide that good. I can still provide it. Whether it's in a good condition, a bad condition is different. But services are highly perishable because you cannot get back the time of your hairdresser, for example. And if you compare maybe a pair of scissors to cut hair, that's not perishable, but your service of a hairdresser is highly perishable because the time is gone once it's gone. So that's how you would think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Then let's see, I have a few questions in the chat. Could we also say that service production and consumption cannot be separated? Yes, this is something we'll even touch upon in the example. So what we say is that for most services, your production and consumption time happens at the same time. It's going to be at the same time. But at the same time, you can't separate, for example, the service provider from the service itself. So with respect to production and consumption, we'll come to an example with respect to your digital banking app, where sometimes it's possible to produce and consume at a different time. So that's why we even look at inseparability in terms of the service provider not being separable from the service itself. Inseparability. I hope that's clear now. Inseparability. Then you have this question where you're asked to discuss the 5 specific characteristics we saw and apply it to 2 examples of public transport and mobile banking app. Before showing the solution, does anyone want to go and answer for public transport, the first characteristic that we saw? Let's pick up something easy. Let's pick up tangibility. Does anyone want to answer with respect to tangibility for these 2 examples? Okay, so let me then go ahead and show the solution. I see something in the chat. Bus, train itself. Exactly, the ride in itself is intangible. So with intangibility, we say that, for example, with public transport, even though the bus is a physical product, you can only buy the ride. And with smartphones, for example, your smartphone is touchable, but your service is done through an automated algorithm. And this confuses few students in terms of, why do we say that then the bus is a physical product, whereas your smartphone is considered touchable? So why over here is it not shown as a negative point? Why is it shown here? And the explanation that we would have is, when you, for example, possess a smartphone, it's different from possessing a bus. Here you just buy the ride, versus here your tangibility, you still own the smartphone. And we still call it a service because your service is through an automated algorithm. But there are always tangible elements of there would be a tangible element, but your service inherently is intangible. So you can't see, feel the service, you can't see or feel the ride. You can't see, your transaction done necessarily through the mobile banking app. Whereas, yeah, there's always going to be a facilitator. Like even when you have, say, for example, a hairdresser, your hairdresser is facilitating the haircut, or basically your service. Then you have perishability. So perishability, what we are saying is that for buses, if you offer more buses or more rides in off-peak hours, it does not improve your rush hour service provision. So say a company says that we'll provide 20% more buses, and during your rush hour, you still need to provide for 50% more services. Firstly, during non-peak hours, it's not going to help. It's highly perishable, the service. It's going to go to waste. And in peak hours, it's still not completely helping to improvise the gap or improve your rush hour service provision. And for the mobile banking app, we say that the service is not perishable because it's always available to use, and one can, it's not like if you didn't make a transfer yesterday, you can't make it today. It's always there to use, and in that sense, it's not perishable. With inseparability, we say that you need to be on the bus to use the transport, and that's why it's inseparable. Your consumption and production and consumption is also going to be at the same time. You're kind of buying the ticket, and to use it, you need to be on the bus. And for a mobile banking app, you're saying normally the consumption occurs at the same time, but as I mentioned, sometimes you can set a transferal for the future, give a command in your app that I want XYZ amount to be transferred at 12 a.m. or 12 noon. And that's why you say that, okay, production may be different at a different time from consumption. I thought perishability for public transport means that it expires at a certain time. As I said, we're thinking more about the service, the chance of the service being gone or not being able to avail the service at that point of time. So the same thing as the airline ticket that I mentioned, that once it's gone, it's gone. The hotel room also, for one night, say it went empty yesterday night, and today your house is full and you have extra customers wanting to stay at your hotel, you can't create that extra room. It's perishable, it's gone. I see a hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, about what Hannah said. For the perishability in this case, can we have like two different types? Like, first of all, the ticket that you have maybe 1 hour to use it, but also like if you miss your bus, you miss your bus. So are these two examples for the perishability of the public transport?
Well, you could use your example of if you lose your bus, you lose your bus, or you miss your bus, you can't catch it. It's perishable, but in this sense, we are thinking more from the company's point of view and not from the customer's point of view necessarily. You can think of it even from a customer's point of view, but here we're talking about it more in terms of if you don't manage to sell your seat, or you don't manage to or you provide extra buses during non-peak hours, it's not going to help during your peak hours because maybe the gap is not filled, wherein you just offer extra buses in the off-peak hours and your seats go empty there. You can't utilize those during your peak hours to create an additional amount. For example, 20 seats go empty in your off-peak hours. You can't say, oh, I want to use these 20 in my peak hours. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, so it's purely from the company's point of view here, not the customer's point of view.
It's more from a company's point of view here.
Okay, thank you.
Then you have perceived purchase risk, where you say that there's always a certain fraction of uncertainty when you're going to purchase a product or service. And even while delivering a service, you cannot be 100% sure because maybe there's a breakdown with the bus, or there is a cancellation of a bus, and punctuality. So when we see DB ban as well, there's always this risk that we go with. We say we want to reach, say from Mannheim to Frankfurt, we want to reach in 1 hour, but there's always a risk that they get delayed. And with respect to the mobile banking app as well, we say that there are always security concerns that customers would have. They have limited knowledge about the processes. But now there are now new methods that are being introduced to kind of improve the level of security and check to make it more secure, to make your app more secure. I see 2 hands raised. So maybe.
So
yeah,
regarding the perceived purchase risk, isn't that very subjective? Like, because I would have said there's no perceived purchase risk with using public transport or using a mobile bank, or at least low purchase risk. I mean, as low as if you buy a banana and open up and it's rotten inside, or avocado. Like, if you get into a bus, you usually will reach your destination in the exact time they promise, or maybe a minute later or something. So the risk is not very high.
We are referring to the quality of the service, because when we look at services marketing, we're even going to be, measuring the quality of service in your serve qual exercise. So it's always your expectation versus what happens. And so there's always this risk with the service. Whereas with a good, for example, you see this bottle and you see this bottle and you're like, okay, this is there. I know this is the functionality of it, and there's no risk when you purchase it. But say you even go to, you're purchasing a DB Bahn ticket. There's always a risk that you don't reach on time. You might reach, but you don't reach on time. And then there's always a possibility of a cancellation or a breakdown. So then you don't necessarily even reach your destination. Whereas if you're buying this product, you know that it's in your possession.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very broad how this exercise looks at it, because, for example, one of the arguments for saying that using mobile banking apps has a high perceived purchase risk is the limited knowledge about the process. If I have limited knowledge about anything, there's a high perceived purchase risk. So if I buy a bottle and I don't know what exactly I want, and I just order it online and it comes to me and I'm disappointed because I thought the lid would be different, there is a high perceived purchase risk. So it seems very arbitrary what is high perceived purchase risk, because
so you can return your bottle, right? You can't return a service.
That's true, but that would be an argument for perishability, not the...
It's all interconnected, right? When you're seeing a service, you're connecting all the features that make it a service. You're looking at them individually. Like, even you may say in variability, we have the point that you mentioned about subjectivity, where you may find a ride comfortable, or you may think, okay, it's punctual, it's 1 minute late, but it's still punctual for you. But for someone else, it might be, oh my God, I missed a connecting train, or I missed a connection. So it's that's why you have variability.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I understand that, but I would have still said it's a low perceived purchase risk, because usually the trains and the buses are on time. That's what I've said, and on average it's on time.
I would say then it falls into your subjective perception, where you have variability as a characteristic. And there's still a perceived purchase risk. Like, you still mentioned that there would be a risk wherein you expect it to be on time, but there is a risk that you're holding versus, as you mentioned, when you're buying a bottle, you can always return the bottle. You can't return the service. Okay.
I mean, not necessarily, because there's companies which make you pay $2.90 to just send it back. So that's a high perceived purchase risk.
You can have 100 examples there, but the basic concept behind
just saying that it's very arbitrary. And in the exam, is there this one correct answer, or if we argument, I mean, if our reasoning is sensible enough, would that be acceptable or not? That's what I'm asking, because
that's also very subjective.
Yeah.
Yes, that's also, I mean, if it's completely off, it's completely off. But why don't you go ahead and ask the professor this? Because I think you'll discuss these characteristics of services even in the lecture. Okay. So for the examination point of view, if it's still not clear and you have 100 examples or 100 instances where you can give, go ahead and ask the professor. She'll be able to tell you what you might have right and what you might have wrong in the exam.
Yes. Thank you.
Julie, your hand is up.
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Okay, Hannah?
Yeah, I just have a quick question regarding the perspective that you take, because for perishability, you said that we take the company point of view, but I think for perceived purchase risk and also what I read for variability, it's really from the customer perspective, because like the company is not gonna see a purchase risk. So where do you take which perspective? Because I think it's kind of hard to make correct answers if you don't know which perspective to take.
So when you're reasoning it out, for example, in a certain, let's take it to be variability, which I'm going to come to. So the speed would refer with respect to the internet connection, and the customer differs in their way of and capabilities of using the app. So from this point of view, we see the first point where it's more related to the customer, wherein the customer using the app, their speed, it may hinder their service, it may be a variable service, but you can also think of it from a point of view from the company, wherein when their service is being measured or their quality of service is being given a score, the variability aspect affects their score. And the customer's capability, for example, affects the firm in itself as well. So you can think of it from both ways as well. There's nothing in terms of a fixed thing that I can say that for variability, you just look at the customer, or for perceived purchase risk, you just look at the customer. For inseparability, you look at the firm. There's nothing that you would have, but remember the principles and the characteristics and how we kind of use these characteristics by definition and try to come up with an answer that way.
Okay.
So DB is never on time. Exactly. I hope, but then the purchase risk is not only a monetary risk, right? Because the banking app would be free. It's not only a monetary risk, it's also with respect to the quality of the service. And that's a huge factor that we see with characteristics of service, that the quality of service sometimes varies, is more risky, because you don't know, you can't tell in advance how it's going to turn out. Could you also say that there are many public transportation possibilities on the market for variability? I don't understand your question, Hendrik. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question of public transportation.
I can say that there's a high variability because there are many suppliers on the market. So I mean, as Gabriel said, there's only there are many providers for such services, so that's also increased variability, right?
Generally, what we are doing,
banking apps.
What we are doing is referring to that banking app in itself. So, for example, you're referring to that particular bus or that particular service, DB Barnes services, or Flixbus, or you're referring to that service in itself. But if you take it to be, for example, a salon, like I gave the example of Blooms, your salon, if you see it as the service provider, then you're saying that the salon services always vary from time to time. But generally, when we are referring to a hairdresser, we refer to one person and we say that, okay, today I couldn't perform well because maybe something happened at home, or maybe I don't feel so well. So its variability is with respect to the individual providing the service. So, for example, we have variability. Let me just complete this point. Maybe then I'll again answer the questions in the chat. But variability says that, your bus drivers vary with regard to their driving skills. So certain bus drivers, the company in itself, depending on the bus driver, their service may be good or their service may be bad. And even for a bus driver, he may be having a good day versus a bad day. And then again, the variability plays from the customer's point of view, because from a customer's point of view, for me, it may be a very comfortable ride because I'm used to maybe, I don't know, not so comfortable buses, or not so maybe people driving me around didn't drive me around in comfort. Whereas for you, you may have always been used to maybe a certain amount of luxury, and you feel like, oh, this is not good. So that's the subjective perception of an individual customer. And for the mobile banking app, the speed differs with respect to, the Wi-Fi connectivity or the mobile internet. And your customers also may have different capabilities to use the app. So an older person may find it extremely difficult, whereas the younger generation may be completely savvy and be able to use all aspects of the app. So I hope that's kind of clarifying variability. Okay, I'm not. Okay, so I hope the characteristics are quite clear and we can move on to the next example, next exercise. So we have a question on service quality. Your first question is asking you all to kind of just list down, it's a theoretical question, to explain the concept of service quality. And does anyone want to go ahead and answer this? Okay, service quality analysis, we use 5 dimensions again. And the main 5 dimensions are reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy, and tangibles. Within these, we have another whole list of attributes that help us identify something as reliability, something as responsiveness, empathy. And we say that ServQual is basically the method used to conceptualize and measure quality of a service. And it's always on a dual scale. So one scale is the perception of the service quality by a company, whereas the second scale would be expectations. And we always use the difference between the perception and the expectation to kind of come up with our average gap score. And we'll see this even in the example earlier. You don't need to mug this up if you understand the process that we are going to be following in the sum earlier. You'll have this in your head and able to explain this method if you're ever asked to. So then we also have 4.2, an exercise that's given where you're asked to match each of these dimensions to the 5 brackets that we have: reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy, tangibles. And let me see the time. So I think we are running a little short of time, so I'll try making this interactive, but I'll also just directly give you all answers. So employees of excellent transport companies give prompt service to customers. Anyone wants to answer, just unmute and answer. No? Okay. So this basically is your responsiveness, prompt services. Excellent transport companies perform service accurately. Reliability, accurately is your keyword here. Employees of excellent transport companies are experts answering customers' questions. Assurance, you have experts answering. Information associated with traveling, like pamphlets, letters, or statements, are visually appealing, easy to understand. Here you have something that's very tangible. So tangibles playing in. Employees at excellent transport have neat appearance, again, tangibility, professional image to customers. Ticket machines, reliability, because they are operating when you need them to operate, so they are very much reliable. Employees of excellent transport respect the privacy of traveling affairs and treat bookings confidentially. This is assurance. You're kind of giving a sort of promise or assurance that we are going to keep your things private. Excellent transport companies have an appealing and professional branch layout. Branch layout is very, very much visible. You can see it. You can enjoy the layout. It's a tangible. Employees of excellent transport understand the specific needs of the customers, understanding, empathy, and consistently courteous with customers, assurance. Could you also say that 7 is empathy? Okay, so you wouldn't say that it's empathy because you're kind of giving them an assurance or a guarantee that we are keeping your things private. Empathy is more with respect to, I understand that we are sorry that it's late, a train is late, or we understand that you need a particular extra booking, or you need an extra accessory in your seat, or you need some extra support, additional help. So that is empathy. Assurance would be, like even in example 3, where you're given a sort of a guarantee. And privacy would be more of a guarantee, that we guarantee you that we are not going to breach your privacy. Any hands up? Yeah, Julie?
Yeah, I don't understand how 3 is not reliability, because in this case, you offer an expert answer, so you are the company is reliable, right? So isn't it more reliability than assurance?
We think of it more in terms of, okay, you're assuring a customer about something related to the service. So you're giving more of an assurance as an expert, whereas reliability would be in terms of maybe being able to rely on the service, that they will perform the service well in the first time itself, or they will, ticket machines will be available and we can rely on them or rely on things that would help perform the service. Whereas assurance is giving more of a guarantee, as I mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Comforting the customer, let's put it that way, because you add confidence to the customer. Exactly. Then let's move on to 4.3. I hope most of you all have, solved this exercise. I would give you all a few minutes to solve it, but I think we are running out of time. So I'll solve it with you all. So over here, as I mentioned in the theory part, we have expected performance and we have perceived performance. And you're given all the scores, and all you're asked to do is find out your overall quality dimension or your overall service quality score. Now, as you can see in this table, we have the 5 dimensions, and then we have different items which we discussed in the previous slide under each of these, and we've segmented them into 5 groups. And what we're going to do is basically find the difference between the expected performance and the perceived performance. So it's perceived performance minus expected performance, and you find the gap for each parameter. So let's see, in the first case, it's 4 minus 6. Minus 2 would be your gap. 5 minus 5, 0. 6 minus 4, 2. So remember, you have minus 2, 0, and 2. Now, this is one group. So your average for this group would be minus 2 plus 0 plus 2, 0 divided by 3. So you get over here a 0. Then reliability. I'm going to show the solution to you all now. So your reliability, you have over here 3 minus 7 minus 4, and you have 7 minus 6 plus 1. So the difference in this is 3, negative 3 divided by 2, because you're averaging these scores, and minus 1.5 for reliability. Then for responsiveness, you have over here 5 minus 7, negative 2, and 4 minus 7, negative 3. And you average it out, negative 5 divided by 2, minus 2.5. And as you can see, for example, over here, you have in responsiveness a negative score, a negative gap between perceived and expected performance for both the, let's say both your items. So your reliability is quite low. And you have an assurance, a positive figure. So you have your expected performance constantly that's going to be lesser than your perceived performance. And so you have, 5 minus 4, and you have 7 minus 6, and then again 7 minus 6. So you constantly have a gap of just 1. You average it out, 1 plus 1 plus 1, 3 divided by 3, 1. And for empathy, again, you have the same, you follow the same thing. 6 minus 6, 0, and you have 4 minus 7, negative 3, averaged out, minus 1.5. And you first have to average out all these gaps and then use the average of these 5 dimensions to find your overall service quality score. So you have 0, minus 1.5, minus 2.5 plus 1, minus 1.5 divided by 5, and you get minus 0.9. And this is how you measure your overall service quality using the serve-qual method. Is because you are, isn't the overall average 0 minus 0.3? I don't think so. I think we get a negative 0.45 and we divide that by 5. So let's see, 0 minus 1.5 minus 1.5 minus 2.5. You add this up, you get 4. Then you kind of deduct 1 from it because you have minus 4, which makes it minus 3. And then you have minus 3 plus minus 1.5, which is minus 4.5. So maybe what you did, Lisa, is probably you didn't, group the averages properly together. I'm not sure because I didn't land up with a minus 0.3. Okay, so you understood it. Great. So yeah. I hope this exercise is clear. I'll move on to the next part of service quality, the service quality exercise. And as I mentioned here, keep in mind all these average gaps that you all got. So over here, you can see responsiveness has the highest gap. But what we'll see is weights coming into the picture. As I mentioned, this whole tutorial is going to be based on weights. And you see, these are your points given to each dimension for your service quality. And we convert these to weights. Now, what you're asked to do is calculate the weighted gap score and draw appropriate conclusions. So what we will do is take the points for each of these and multiply it by our average gap score that we got for each. So what we have is all the first figures over here are your weight 0.10, 0.45, 0.20, 0.15, and 0.10. We got this from this table. Basically 10 divided by 100, 45 divided by 100, as we can see here. And these in the bracket, these scores we got from our average gaps. And when we multiply it, we come up with 0.1 into 0, 0, 0.45 into negative 1.5, negative 0.675. And this way we come up with the weighted score for each of the dimensions. And as we can see over here, we have the highest or the lowest dimension of service quality being reliability. Now in the table back there, we saw that, well, responsiveness was actually lower, but over here we are saying that reliability has such a high weight and it carries a lot of weight in general for the service quality being measured, and that's why you have such a low number. And so in the recommendation, we're giving a recommendation, we first say we need to improvise as reliability dimension because it carries a heavy weight and even a negative performance. And then we look at the other two features, which are minus 0.5 and minus 0.15, which are responsiveness and empathy. And we are saying that we also need to focus and deliver above expectations on these two dimensions of responsiveness and empathy. So I hope this was clear. This is how you go about answering the question. Then let me move on to our next part. Hannah, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, because we have negative values for some of them. I didn't really understand what the difference between negative and positive values are. Maybe you already explained it. So I'm sorry if I didn't get it, but please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me go ahead and explain it again. So what happens is that you have in this table, you have a negative or a positive value. What it shows here, for example, responsiveness, minus 2.5, has the highest gap. So from this table, you would say, oh, we need to improvise on our responsiveness because the difference between the perceived performance and the expected performance is extremely high in this case. So that's how we look at this table and we calculate the average gap. But the minute your weights come into question, what we say is that your weights also hold a huge it holds weight. Okay, it holds weight, and that's why you have a negative value that's exponentially increasing for, say, reliability versus responsiveness, even though through the average gaps we got your responsiveness outweighing or a higher negative number in your responsiveness versus your reliability. So if it's negative anyway, we are saying that, okay, we need to improvise. That would be a recommendation. But when we are adding weights to it, we are seeing that it's exponentially, exponentially having an effect, or it's not having a great effect. Like in case of reliability, it's exponentially having an effect, whereas with responsiveness, the weight is lower. So it kind of gets neutralized, and your negative number also gets neutralized depending on the weight. But your question with respect to negative numbers show that the service quality is not it's not performing as well as it should, and it's rated with a lower this dimension is rated lower then the difference between the perceived and the expected is low, and you have to improve your service quality. And we're doing it per dimension over here, and then your overall service quality you're measuring with an average. So if it's negative, then you have to improvise. Okay. Then you have your NPS, which is your Net Promoter Score. This is another technique that we use to measure service quality. And I would say even in a very practical sense, this particular method is used. So you may be asked as you go ahead and intern or you work, and you may be asked to find out how satisfied your customers are with your service. So whether you're going to be in a consulting firm or you're going to be, just customer facing. You may be asked by your manager to go ahead and ask your customers to fill out a survey and rank your quality of your service from 0 to 10. And here with the NPS score, we say that we have certain dimensions, or we segregate the rating scale into promoters, passives, and detractors. So your promoters are all your customers who would give a 9 or a 10, a score of 9 or 10. Your passives, they don't play a role in your formula. If you go to see, and yeah, they're passives, 7 and 8, anyone giving a score of 7 and 8. And your detractors are unhappy customers who are not going to promote you, who may even maybe spread negative news or spread a negative word around for your service. And these are all customers who give you a rating from 0 to 6. And we'll see in the example over here, you have region North, region South, and you have the number of customers that gave a rating of 0 to 10. And you're asked to calculate the NPS for region North and region South. Now, our NPS formula is percentage of your promoters minus percentage of your detractors, which would be the total of all your customers giving a score of 9 or 10 divided by the total number of customers minus your customers giving a score of 0 to 6 divided by the total number of customers. And in the example, I've just put this to make it easier. Detractors would be everyone giving this score, passives would be 7 to 8, and promoters would be 9 to 10. I see a question. Should we evaluate, should we calculate the passives in the exam, or is it sufficient? You can just calculate the detractors and promoters. Technically, the formula doesn't even include a calculation that's necessary for your passives. And I'll show it to you all here. So it's your percentage promoters minus your percentage detractors. So your passives don't come anywhere. And for NPS of the North region, we have your promoters being this segment, which is 1,900 plus 1,400, since they've given a score of 9 or 10. You add these up, these are your total customers who are promoters, divided by your total customers in the region, which is 7,450, minus your detractors, which are all your customers that give a score from 0 to 6, add them up, divided by the total. And you subtract your detractors from your promoters, and you get 12.08%. Similarly, for your South region, you have 1,500 plus 1,000 as your promoters divided by total customers, 7,310, minus your detractors, everyone giving a score from 0 to 6, and divided by your total customers, and you get a negative number here, which shows that your customers are not happy. It shows that your net promoter score is negative, which means they're not going to promote your product, and they might in fact spread a negative word around. And so as a recommendation, we say that we compare the NPS from different regions, or we compare maybe the NPS of one team in a consultancy firm versus another team, and we see how we can improvise our services, and you can share best practices from the team which is getting a higher NPS. Should we calculate? Okay, great. So I hope this is quite easy, and it's also quite relevant in the working world. So try remembering it. Then you have a concept of earned growth rate, and how we say that NPS is definitely used by companies, but your EGR is an accounting based principle where you kind of differentiate between your type of customers that you're gaining. So for example, your customers who you're earning versus customers who you're buying. Your customers who are earned are customers who you have through referrals or you gain through referrals, versus your customers that are bought through promotional channels, advertising campaigns, and that's why you term them as bought customers. And your formula for EGR is equal to NRR plus ENC. NRR is your net revenue retention. ENC is your earned new customers. So what is net revenue retention? Net revenue retention are basically the revenue that you get from all your existing customers, and that's your old customers as well, so in a way loyal. And your ENC is your earned new customers, so revenue from only earned new customers, not bought new customers. And in this these two charts, you can see that you have company A versus company B. And when you're finding the EGR for company A, you see your old customers, so your existing customers, where you have 85%. So you have 85% plus 25%. 25% are your earned new customers, not your bought customers, minus 100%. And that's how you get 10%. Whereas for company B, you say that my repeated customers was 65%, whereas your earned new customers were only 10. Deduct 100%, negative 25. So as you can see, in both cases, you have a revenue of 100 and 130 in your 2020 and 21 respectively. But you can see that your EGR for company A grew. It's in a positive, wherein your EGR, your earned growth rate for your company B was a negative because you had many bought customers. You didn't have many earned customers. And so, yeah, we say that company B is achieving revenue growth by aggressively buying new customers, and that would kind of affect their future profitability, and it's very unsustainable. Why do we don't use the formula given on the? We use this. So we are saying that your NRR and your ENC. NRR is your net repeated customer revenue, which is 85%, because you have this as repeats and upgrades. So you're not asked here to find it out, it's given directly, and you're using the NRR over here, and you basically don't use this formula because you're already given a percent, but you're using this formula, EGR equals to NRR plus ENC. And ENC is your earned new customers, which is this segment. Again, you're not finding out the percentage because you're given it very directly, but you're using the EGR formula, which is NRR plus earned new customers minus 100%. I hope that's clear. Then let's move on to the exercise that you all were given. Now for this exercise, you all are asked to calculate the earned growth rate for the companies McDaisy and Burger Queen. I think there's a typo here. It's not 3 companies, it's these companies or the 2 companies that you have been given. You're asked to calculate the EGR for McDaisy and Burger Queen, and you're given a set of statements. Now, I would give you all a minute or 2 to try to segregate all these statements into your bought customers, your earned customers, and your retained customers. Try doing it for at least one. We'll go through McDaisy for it. So try doing it for McDaisy, and we'll compare it to Burger Queen, and we'll see how you get the figures and what you segregate, because that's going to be important. Okay, so assuming all of you saw the keywords and segregated the different statements as bought customers, earned customers, retained customers, let's discuss. So for McDaisy, the total revenue you've been given it very directly, 10 million, and you've kind of been given these different statements saying that 38,000 of your retained customers. Retained is given very directly here, which would be your old retained NRR, forming your NRR. So how we calculate this is 38,000 into 25, because each of these customers are visiting approximately 25 times a year and spending on average 8.5. So 38,000 into 25 into 8.5 would give you your revenue from retained customers. Then it's given one-time customers gained through promotional campaign. Now, remember I mentioned that promotional campaign is not a referral, and therefore it comes under a bought customer and not an earned customer. So these 60,000 one-time customers would form part of your revenue through your bought customers. So you have 60,000 into 1 into 7.5. Plus, again, you've been given that customers have been gained through the same campaign. So you have 60,000 into 7.5 plus 20,000 into 8 into 9, because these customers are visiting more frequently, on an average 8 times per year, and spending 9 euros each time they visit. So these two statements form part of your bought customers. This statement forms part of your retained customers. And now you have 20,000 new customers that were attracted by family and friends, 7,000 visiting the store once, spending 8 on average, 5,000 visiting 5 times, spending 8.5, and 8,000 visiting 20 times, spending 10. Now here, you know that these are attracted through referrals, because we're told that it's attracted through family and friends. So these are your own customers. So you have 7,000 into 8 plus 5,000 into 5 into 8.5 plus 8,000 into 20 into 10. And that's how we come up with this working for your total revenues, your retained customers, bought, earned. And what we also see is that we add up these revenues and calculate the total revenue for 2021. And we do this to compare it with your total revenues of 2022. Now, you're not asked to calculate the revenue growth rate, but we are going to do it for the purpose of giving our recommendations and interpreting our results. So as we can see over here, your growth rate from 2021 to 2020, from 2020 to 2021 over here is 20.46%. So well, your revenue grew. But when you're calculating EGR, you're seeing it's in the negative. It's very low. And that's because when you're calculating your NRR, you're calculating your net retained customer value, how much you're getting from them, and you're calculating your earned revenue. You're calculating from your earned new customers. And again, you're getting a relatively lower number because your revenue from an earned customer is not very different. It's lower than what it is from your bought customer. So you're seeing here that MacDaisy is spending high amounts on buying customers, and this is unsustainable, as we saw. So that's the reason you may have a negative EGR, earned growth, whereas you have a overall positive revenue growth. And we do the same for Burger King. So the second two are not either NRR or ENC. Second two, are you referring to the statements? This one? This is your retained customers. So this is NRR. Do we even need to calculate revenues from bought customers? Calculated for the sake of your interpretation. So when you see when you're interpreting your answers, you'll see that these figures come into play. Where do the 12,000 come from? I don't know what you're referring to.
So for the revenue growth rate, you calculate with 12,046,000. Divided by 10 million is 20%. Yeah, that line. Yeah.
This rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it should be your total revenues, from 2021 minus this. Okay. So I think there's a mistake here. We had a mistake in the sum. So you would normally do your total revenue from 2021 minus your 2020 revenue, and you would get the difference divided by your original revenue. And you would still, let's take it to be, for example, what we have over here in the sum. I'll calculate it here so that we get the right percentage. Sorry, apologies for this mistake. I didn't realize it. Yeah. So here we have then 18.35% as our revenue growth rate. And we see that still your revenue is growing by approximately 18%, but your EGR is negative. So remember this, there's a mistake over here. You're ideally supposed to calculate the difference between your total revenue for 2021 minus 2020's revenue and divided by your original revenue. So you're getting about 18.5% versus 20.46, but you still see that your EGR is comparatively much lower, and that's because of your bot customers. You have a very high number of bot customers that are contributing to your overall revenue growth, and that's the reason we ask you to calculate the bot customers. Then for Burger Queen, we do the same. Over here, the statements are the same. Retain customers, you find out 55,000 into 24, and they're spending 9.5 on average. You're seeing over here, you're gaining customers through promotional means, which is your bot customers, 40,000 into 5, and they are one-time customers. And then you're saying we have new customers through referrals, out of which these guys 7,000 are coming once, so 7,000 into 1 into 7.5 plus 5,000 into 5 into 8 plus 8,000 into 15 into 9. So we do the same thing, and what we see over here is when we are finally getting our revenue growth rate, here we see a 17.27%, but we also see a positive EGR because we calculate our NRR, we have 104.5, we have ENC 11.1. We add up the two, deduct 100%. And I saw a question why we deduct 100%, because we are playing with percentages over here. So we have to stick to the same, we are calculating with percentages, so we deduct 100%. Why do we calculate revenue growth rate at all? As I mentioned, it's to compare your revenue growth rate versus your EGR. So in the previous example, as we saw with MacDaisy, you had a positive revenue growth rate of around 18%, but a negative EGR. Whereas over here with Burger Queen, you have a revenue growth rate lesser than MacDaisy, but you have a positive EGR, which shows that your earned customers, which means customers through referrals and not promotional campaigns, you're having a higher earned growth than MacDaisy. So that's why we calculate revenue growth rate and EGR to compare and help us with coming out with this recommendation, where we say that even though MacDaisy has a higher revenue growth rate, Burger King has a far better EGR because of the share of loyal customers, and Burger Queen does not spend money on campaigns, whereas MacDaisy invests considerably more, which you get from your bought customers versus your earned customers. So you can see over here with bought customers in Burger Queen, you have just 200,000, and that shows that you're buying much fewer customers than you're actually earning. And that's the reason we calculate even bought customers and revenue growth rate. I hope that answers you all. How can we know from the statements that these are values for 2021? So total revenues are given for 2020, and then if you calculate your total revenues, we are comparing it for 2021. I know it's not clearly given. It came to my mind that when you're calculating one year and then you're getting another figure, it's for the new year. So that's how you would be given it in the exam, most probably. I think it's a slip up where it's not mentioned here. Bought customers are neither NRR nor ENC, and they only, yes, exactly, they're not your retained customers, nor are they earned customers. They just contribute to the total revenue, which is why we calculate total revenue growth rate. And now I'll move on to exercise 7. We just have another 10 minutes left. Importance of performance analysis. So what we have over here is a simple question where you're given a rating scale, and there's a mean importance rating and a mean performance rating. And you have a university, and there are different attributes like expertise of professors, IT infrastructure, library, number of car parking spaces. And one rating is showing how important these attributes are, whereas the second shows the performance of these attributes. And we have a 2x2 matrix over here, and we are asked to plot each of these attributes or each of these attributes with respect to the mean importance rating and mean performance rating. We have not important below, extremely important high, poor performance and excellent performance. So what we see is, okay, with expertise of professors, you have 3.61 and 3.49. 3.61 in the importance rating would push it comparatively higher, and similarly 3.49 as well would push it comparatively higher in terms of excellent performance. So you would somewhat land up over here with your first attribute. I hope all of you all have plotted the attributes properly, but I'm going to show you all how we plotted the attributes. And so we have, for example, 1 and 6, which is our reputation and expertise of professors in keeping up the good work. As part of concentrate here, we see that these are important attributes, but they are performing poorly. So in that case, let's see, second one, you have a high importance rating, 3.31, but a mean performance as 1.91. So you would have it falling over here. And as you can see, 2 is over here. So this way we just plot it like a normal graph plotting, and then we have to give a recommendation. So does anyone want to answer okay, let me see the chat first. How do we know that they spend a lot on marketing campaigns? They've mentioned it in the exercise itself on promotional activities. Why do we have more than 100% for the previous exercise? Okay, let me see if I can just go back there. Over here, we see that, for example, we have we have a negative value because, as I mentioned, you don't have too many customers which were sort of, earned. They were just bought customers. And over here, we say that, okay, we have 104.5 over here because your customers that are retained over here form a huge part, or like a much heavier part than what you have customers that are newly owned or newly bought. So your retained customers are like 55,000 versus your owned customers, which would be, like 7,000 customers plus 5,000 plus 8,000. So that's the reason you have that. And then your net revenue from these customers was much higher in 2021 versus even your total revenue of 2020. And that's why, when you have it, you're landing up as a mathematical calculation with a greater than 100% answer. Now, let me just get back to this. We'll complete this. We have 6 minutes left. The solutions that your recommendations that we have is that, okay, your quadrant A, that's this quadrant, shows important service elements, but unfavorable performance or low performance. And that's why you need to take action to improve these services. So in case of 2 and 4 over here, we saw that number of students per class and equipment of the library was important, but your rating wasn't good. And that's why you have to focus on these to kind of make improve the performance and move them into B, the quadrant B. In quadrant B, we are saying that it's important and it's performing well, so keep up the good work. For quadrant C, it's anyway a low priority, it's not important and it's not performing well, ignore it, no attention necessary. And for quadrant D, we say that, well, the performance is excellent, but it's not so important. So what recommendation you could give is for 5, which was your IT infrastructure, you stop paying so much attention to it and instead focus on what fell into 4 and 2 and try to bring up those performance, because those are important. So instead of IT services, you kind of improvise on the number of students per class or your library facilities to improvise your entire matrix or to improvise your performance analysis. I see questions. So which are scale values for this table? So it's 1 to 4 here. See, extremely important, important, slightly important, not important. And yeah, with 4 being highest and 1 being lowest in case of importance, and in case of even your performance, 4 being highest and 1 being poor. Yes, so let's see, many more questions. Yeah, someone answered it, 1 to 4. Okay, I think all questions have been answered. So we're done with the tutorial for today. I hope this was beneficial for y'all. And I would really recommend y'all to go ahead and ask questions on Saturday when you'll have a session, an extra session for this class. Thank you.